What's going on, you gorgeous gyrating guanacos? Welcome to this week's episode of Total Pod Mode. My name is James, also known as Mr. Bames, and I'm joined as always by the wondrous Will, also known as Hoodafunk.
What's up, guys? Good to be back for another week.
Coming up on today's episode, we've got our usual catch-up, followed by some gaming news where we're talking about a trailer, some more unfortunate layoffs, and an update on a highly anticipated DLC. Finishing off the episode, we've got the Games Challenge, where we find out if I can make it last one more week. But first, before we get into all that, let's hit them socials. You can, as always, find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and pretty much anywhere else you get your podcasts by searching for Total Pod Mode.
We also post regular video content of our playthroughs, stream highlights, as well as the podcast on our YouTube channel, Total Pod Mode.
You can also find us on X by searching for @TotalPodMode, all one word.
Or you can find me at Hoodafunk on X, and I'm also on Twitch under twitch.tv/Hoodafunk.
And you can find me on X at Mr. Bames, and I'm also on Twitch under twitch.tv/MrBames_TPM. So man, let's get after it. What have you been playing this week?
So this week I'm happy to report back that I finally made good on my promises to pull my finger out and get a little bit more done in Zelda Tears of the Kingdom.
Very good.
Just a couple of things I wanted to talk about straight away. I've experimented with a few more shrines on the way now, and I've finally run into a few more memorable ones, some ones that have kind of forced me to take a look at the way that you use your powers in the game in quite interesting ways.
Oh yeah? What's some of your highlights?
Making a paddle boat was a pretty good one, using a wheel contraption as well as like a log base. You can stick other bits of wood onto the wheel, and after you hit it, it spins, and you can use just, you know, a pretty traditional paddle boat style to get across water. Wasn't something I'd really considered or really thought would work before, but I'm really surprised because the shrines have really opened up my thinking in terms of the way that you can use some of your powers, particularly the Ultra Hand, along with the physics in the game.
That sounds cool though, man. Do you think the shrines sort of act like tutorials for some of the things you can do, maybe?
I think so. Yeah. Another example was making a machine that kind of used very similar paddles, but to climb up a very uneven surface that was just made out of poles. It's not the sort of thing that you could climb over or get over easily, but if you attach paddles to wheels, they sort of act like gears running along a cog, and you can use that to traverse up through a shrine. That was an interesting way of using your powers as well. So yeah, just having a fun time playing around with the physics and things like that in the game. Nice.
And have you found any uses in the overworld for any of the things you've learned in the shrines? Like, have you made your own paddle boat style contraption on the surface?
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually the main one that I've been fashioning myself quite a lot now. Is I've kind of got a regular paddle boat that I can take out, and I take that directly down the rivers in the game as well. You can get quite a few good enemies and good loot for cooking and getting various bonuses that you can from special kinds of fish.
Nice.
Not only have I been mucking around in the shrines, but I finally decided to head to the Hebra Mountains, which is to the western part of the map in the game, but not before tragedy struck, unfortunately for me.
Oh no, what happened?
So I was out exploring, and as I mentioned before, I caught myself a horse. And I also discovered that when you go to these stables, you can also actually activate horses that you'd boarded from the previous game as well. So I actually managed to dig out my dearly beloved Arthur, named via the Red Dead Redemption 2 title.
Very good.
Unfortunately, it was pretty aptly named Arthur, because Arthur also winded up dying in Tears of the Kingdom as well.
Oh damn. Did he get TB?
A very, very... No, he didn't, no. This was much more tragic and sudden.
Oh no.
I was trying to climb a cliff face, and if you're unaware in this game, you can use fire to light grass, and the grass will create an updraft that you can then use your glider to catch hold of and float upwards in the sky.
That's really smart.
I had a flame-emitting club that you can swing in the game, and I got a little overzealous with my swing as I was setting some grass on fire, and Arthur kind of got clipped by the flames. Sort of ran off, and, you know, I thought, oh, okay, right, I'll sort that out later. Go get this shrine first. But I couldn't manage to make it up because unfortunately at the time it was raining, so the rain very quickly put out the fire on the grass. It created an updraft for like half a second before it got put out. Yeah. So couldn't use it in order to get to the shrine. And then I turned around looking for Arthur, thinking I'm going to have to find another way up using the horse. I couldn't see him. His icon was still showing on the map, but I was looking around desperately for him. And then I slowly edged towards the nearby cliff and noticed that as I'd scared off with the flame, in his panic and fear, he actually had jumped off the cliff, because as I looked down, I saw a writhing in pain on the ground, my buddy. This was again very much like a Red Dead 2 moment as well. I dropped down, but there was nothing I could do to save him ultimately, and I honestly don't know what you do when your horse dies in this game. Obviously, you can just catch another one. But how can I replace Arthur? This guy carried me all the way through Breath of the Wild. I caught him right early on in the game. He's not a particularly good horse by any means, but he held a great deal of sentimental value.
Yeah.
And
then why'd you try and set him on fire then?
Well, that was not intentional. That was definitely a mistake on my part.
Right,
I could have done a better job maybe checking on his welfare after I did that. I will admit that. That's on me.
It was raining though. I mean, the fire would go out.
It should have put him out, in all fairness. Yeah. Exactly. He wouldn't have been on fire for long. So, yeah, that's all Arthur wrote in Tears of the Kingdom. I kind of like pulled him out from the back benches for all of about 15 minutes.
Oh, you only got him for 15 minutes as well. Oh.
Yeah.
That's really sad.
He really didn't get a good inning at all before he got sent off a cliff. And at this point, I mean, maybe someone can write in and let me know if there's a way that you can get your horse back. I do know that there's a horse god in the game, so maybe if I pray hard enough to him, he'll bring Arthur back. I don't know, but
I imagine I have to pay some rupees to resurrect him or something. Maybe at the stable.
I was kind of hoping that if I just whistled for long enough, he would just kind of spawn. But instead, I just watched him kind of writhing in pain and then slowly fading out of existence. It was very, very depressing.
Oh, did you fucking hell.
Brutal. I know. I was surprised to see it in a Zelda game. I tried to revive him by just standing next to him and whistling repeatedly, but it did nothing to cure the...
Did you just pour a potion on him?
Shattered. Just dropping loads of apples next to the horse, hoping that he'd bite one.
Come on, wake up.
It doesn't work.
Oh, damn. Well, rip Arthur.
Yeah, F's in the chat for Arthur. So, with that tragedy behind us, although never forgotten.
But I did catch a new horse and move on straight away.
No, actually, I'll be honest. I haven't caught another horse since. That death did kind of rock me a little bit. And now I'm a little scared to get out. Like I said, Arthur, all respect to the guy. He was a cool guy. I think he might have actually been a girl. But
Arthur, nonetheless.
Cool horse. He was actually one of the worst horses that I had. In reality, I have a lot better horses than him in my repertoire, and as I've discovered, I can carry a lot of the horses that I had in Breath of the Wild over, including some of the special ones like the giant horse. I don't want to lose them now. I'm going to just kind of catch a mediocre horse in Tears of the Kingdom and just ride that one around then. I've got my stable of good horses, and they'll only go out for, showings and things, but they're not adventure horses.
No.
We all know what happens with adventure horses.
Yeah, you set them on fire and they run off cliffs.
You make it sound like it was so intentional.
You said you were waving fire around just trying to set grass on fire.
You had
a reason, to be fair. You had a reason.
Not an arsonist.
It wasn't for no reason. Yeah, I was about to say for no reason, but no, you had a reason. It's fair enough.
Yes, although it's a shame that it happened to be raining, so my reasoning for doing it just immediately got negated and caused the tragedy instead.
Oh no, your reasoning was sound. Your logic was off.
Yeah. Story of my life. So with that tragedy behind us, I did actually also go back to Hateno Village and complete the mayoral election. I kind of sided with both of them, but I'd be interested to know whether you can be a bit more polarized and actually go for one over the other, because they both have missions for you to do that you need to discover. For Cece, the fashionista, you need to go around handing out mushrooms, Hylian mushrooms, to people in the town. Her fashion sense and a lot of her iconography on all of her designs is all mushrooms, so I guess she's just a big mushroom fan.
Yeah, she likes her psychedelics.
Yeah, I guess so. She's just hoping to gain voters. So that one's just a mission where you stroll around the town handing those out, really, identifying villagers based on the fact that they're not wearing mushroom garb. After you've done that, as I mentioned last week, they both have sort of deeply held secrets. That's the current mayor of the town and Cece the fashionista. You end up finding by tailing Cece that her deep-seated secret is that she is a huge fan of the town's vegetables, and the soil in Hateno produces unique vegetables, and she's a big fan of that. That's her big secret, apparently.
Yeah.
Likewise, the mayor's secret is actually that he kind of appreciates Cece's designs, although he does very much want to keep the village into its old ways of just being a traditional farming village. He also does recognize that Cece's designs do bring in customers, so he wants to kind of fold in this fashion sense into his vegetable production. Not quite sure how he intends to do that. I think he's making some sort of fancy vegetables.
It all sounds very Nintendo.
Yeah. None of these storylines really go anywhere. It eventually culminates in both of those secrets being revealed on the day of the election, and they both agree, in fact, that the best way for the future of the village is to incorporate Cece's new fashion ideas into the town, as well as preserve the old customs and things that the village was originally known for. So you kind of don't really end up falling either side of the argument if you played it the way I played it. They both accept that they're both right and they just kind of move on.
They work together.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
They both become leaders of the town. So with the election done, I was finally ready to head to Hebra and on my way to Rito Village as well. Rito Village is the village of the bird-like people in the game, and the village is currently under a large amount of snow because they've got this massive snowstorm that's taking place around the village as a result of a giant cloud in the sky that's kind of hovering above very ominously. And this is one of the 4 big disturbances in the map that you're supposed to be investigating. So I finally got round to actually doing one of the main things of the game.
Nice. This is like the mythical beast equivalent.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. So in this game, it seems that they've replaced the beasts with more traditional temples. This one was actually the Sky Temple, and you work your way up by befriending the Rito chief's son called Tullin in the game, and he's like a talented young Rito warrior. He's got a special ability where he can create gusts of wind using his wings. So after working my way up to the Sky Temple, you do that through jumping through various what look like Viking warships, but they act as sort of trampolines. They have like a horizontal trampoline on each of them that you can land on and use to spring through the air. And in combination with your glider and Tullin's gust ability, which can put a load of wind in your wings and send you hurtling forwards, you're able to bounce between enough of these Viking warships to finally make your way up to the very top of the cloud that's hanging in the sky and drop down into the Sky Temple. And it's like a giant floating ship, really. Yeah, it's just like a giant floating flying ship. I reckon that the temples, they are, I would say, a tiny bit bigger than the ancient beasts that you had to work your way through the puzzles in Breath of the Wild. So I think the challenges around this one were all very wind specific. You were using your gust ability a lot, you were using the surrounding pirate ships, and I'm sure that for each of the other ones they'll have their own very specific themes, which is a step in the right direction compared to Breath of the Wild, where they did have their own themes, but the solution to the puzzle all revolved around the same solution, which was rotating mechanically the beast to reconfigure the rooms so that you could solve the puzzles within the rooms. So all of the 4 temples kind of felt very similar and interchangeable, whereas, as I say, this one was very wind themed, and I'm imagining there's going to be a water temple, a lava temple, and a desert temple, and they'll all have their own challenges involved with them as well. So I'm looking forward to experiencing the other ones. I feel like they're an improvement on Breath of the Wild. Nothing too crazy, but definitely a step in the right direction.
Similar scope, it sounds like.
Just done better,
improved slightly,
more varied.
Yeah,
I think it's probably the best way to describe it. When you finally work your way through, I think it's 5 or 6 different wind turbines that you need to power in order to complete the temple. Very similar to the previous game, you fight a boss at the end. It's not a version of Ganon this time. It's actually, so this one was called Colgera, Scourge of the Sky Temple. It's like a giant floating spiky dragon that has icy undersides which are weak to arrow shots, and then you can fire another arrow shot to hit its weak point. I think you need to hit it about 8 or 9 times to drain the health bar. And throughout the whole fight, you're using the sudden gusts of air around you to keep yourself in the air. And I don't know if you remember from playing Breath of the Wild, but you slow down time. If you're falling through the air and you aim your bow and arrow, you're able to slow down time. So that's a key part of hitting the weak points, is just timing between activating your glider, closing your glider, switching to your bow and popping one of the weak points as you fly past it. And then occasionally using Tullin's gust ability to avoid attacks that are coming in as well.
That sounds kind of similar to, isn't there a dragon fight in Breath of the Wild?
There is, it's similar kind of fight to that. So with all of that done, that was a pretty chunky bit of headway there. I found the very first temple in the game, beat the first boss, got my first ability, lost a dear friend. I would say 1 step back, but 2 steps forward. So I'm finally ready to take on whatever the game offers me now, because I think I mentioned last week that there are a few things hinging on me doing this first mission. So yeah, looking forward to reporting back next week if I find a bit more time to play this game. But that's about me for this week, man. What about yourself?
I have only played 1 game this week, and we'll talk about it later.
Right, okay. Game challenge keeping you busy, huh?
Yeah.
Right.
We'll get into it. So with that, we do come to the end of the catch-up of this week, so why don't we move over to the news? So with our first news story this week, a small confirmation came out, just like a bit of a nothing trailer that's going to happen in the next week or so.
Minor indie game, right? Something like that.
Yeah, that sort of thing. A company called Rockstar. They've confirmed an exact date for a game called GTA 6. No big deal, really.
I heard the last one wasn't that popular.
No, it's certainly not still going. I mean, Jesus. But all joking aside, we of course aggregated reports a couple of weeks ago saying that a GTA 6 trailer would drop in December. And now Rockstar have confirmed this to be correct, stating that the first Grand Theft Auto 6 trailer will drop on the 5th of December at 9 AM Eastern Time. As reported by Game Rant, Rockstar haven't confirmed what fans can expect from the trailer, but it includes an interesting image with the announcement that hints at what fans can expect. The image on the Rockstar Games X account has a distinct Vice City look about it, seemingly confirming the long-standing rumour that we will be returning to Miami. Although, as always, take this with a pinch of salt until the trailer actually drops.
Oh god, no, that's fully confirmed as far as I'm considered.
Me too, but I'm just covering, just in case it ends up being Los Santos again.
An editorial cover, allegedly.
It will be interesting to see whether other rumours end up being true, if Vice City is indeed the setting. I'm, of course, thinking mainly about the dual Bonnie and Clyde style protagonists, for example. Although it's not outside the realms of possibility that Rockstar may have pivoted after the leaks earlier this year. I personally don't think that's the case. As we've sort of intimated, though, I think this image pretty much does confirm that we're going back to Vice City.
100%.
Could I see them ditching the Bonnie and Clyde thing after the reveal? Maybe, but probably not.
I think that these storylines are way too far in the works, and I imagine they spend a lot of time developing all of this stuff. To change something like a dynamic like that, they would have to work some real wizardry to be able to turn it around in time. I mean, that said, I still don't think that either of us are minded that this trailer is going to end in a release date.
As we sort of said, I might have been last week, maybe a couple of weeks ago, I wouldn't mind betting that they're only releasing this trailer to wash the taste of the leaked footage out of people's mouths.
Yeah.
Just like, it is real, this is what it's actually going to look like, but we'll tell you more stuff later down the line when the game's actually a bit more ready.
I've got a strong feeling that this trailer is mostly going to be exposition of the environment. I'm more expecting just broad views of the city, kind of like what we got with Grand Theft Auto 5, just seeing sort of people on the beach, people walking along, at bars, doing regular NPC activities. Sort of. Yeah.
With a nice jazzy tune over the top. So. Some gunshots every so often.
I'm expecting a couple blasts of Scarface soundtrack. It'll be there for sure. Makes some sense. 80s kind of pop and rock.
Be interesting to see that, man. I'm looking forward to seeing what the world looks like a bit more. Obviously, roughly what you're getting with Vice City, but be interesting to see if they show off any cars as well.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure they'll have a few sweeping shots of the city and traffic. I think that will be the kind of stuff we'll get a sense of, is what does the traffic look like in the game? What does walking down the street? How alive does the city feel? Little examples of that is what I'm hoping to see, rather than a great deal of background information on the characters and things like that. I'm more interested to see just how alive and breathing this city is, considering what they managed to achieve in Red Dead 2. I kind of want to just see that done on a larger, more dense scale. And
I guess we've got trailers 2, 3, 4, and however many they're going to be to see the characters and get the idea of the story. So I agree. I think that'd be a good way to start. So with our second news story this week, more unfortunate news of layoffs from Embracer, as well as a potential studio closure, unfortunately.
God damn. Yeah. This news coming at the end of the year.
Yeah, 2023 hasn't been the one for the gaming industry, man.
No, tough break right before Christmas.
Exactly. So according to a report from PC Gamer, the company, Embracer, has confirmed that approximately 50 employees are being laid off from Chorus developers Fish Labs, and is also reportedly looking at closing Time Splitters studio Free Radical Design completely. As well as Chorus, Fish Labs also had a hand in recent games, including Dead Island 2, the Saints Row reboot, maybe don't talk about that too much, and the Xbox version of Valheim. It was working on an unannounced game known internally as Project Black, but parent company PlayOn, one of Embracer's internal divisions, said it was unable to find financing for the project and was thus forced to cancel it and cut employees. A day after the Fish Labs layoffs were announced, VGC reported that Embracer is also looking at closing Free Radical Design entirely. Free Radical was founded in 1999 and closed in 2014, but was then reformed in 2021 to work on the new Time Splitters game, which presumably is now canned if they're considering closing the studio, right? Rumour has it that an internal email suggests that Free Radical is facing potential closure as soon as the 11th of December if a buyer cannot be found. Unfortunately, it seems that 2023 will continue to be a bad year for those working in the games industry. Fingers crossed that all of this improves in 2024, and of course our thoughts go out to all of those that are affected. Not a nice story, this. With our final news story this week, moving back on slightly more positive things, finally, there is an update on the upcoming Elden Ring expansion. Sort of. It's a fairly vague one.
It's a tenuous update, is it?
I think it's kind of cool, but that's because I'm a bit of a mark, as we'll get into. So once again, aggregating a report from our friends at Game Rant, Elden Ring producer Yasuhiro Kitao has given a development update on how Shadow of the Erdtree is progressing, as well as when fans may expect to play it. Sort of, not really.
Or sort of, not really. Okay.
Yeah.
I like how you're kind of post-fixing all of this. Negating everything as you go line by line.
While speaking at the PlayStation Partners Awards, From Software and Elden Ring producer Yasuhiro Kitao provides a small update on how the Shadow of the Erdtree expansion is progressing. Kitao admitted that the expansion is still likely a ways out, hence why I say, well, not really, right?
Is that a quote?
Yeah.
Kitao, it's a ways out. Yeah. Won't be seeing it for a minute.
Though development progress is going well. Without revealing too much else, he did mention that similar to what the studio did with the Bloodborne expansion known as the Old Hunters, Shadow of the Erdtree will feature new battles and characters for Elden Ring players to experience. Though of course stopped short from providing any concrete facts or details.
Sure thing. Okay.
Yeah.
So he's kind of just more confirming what people are hoping for, which is a kind of a like-for-like DLC of a similar quality to their previous ones for Dark Souls, Bloodborne, etc.
Well, this is where I say that I'm a mark, right? Because the biggest endorsement for this is that if he literally said the Old Hunters by name, in my opinion, that's one of the best expansions ever made.
Right, yeah.
And across any game, it's sublime how good that is.
Sublime!
And if you put that sort of quality into Elden Ring, I mean, that's going to be awesome. And frankly, they can take as long as they need if that's what we're getting. Although, not going to lie, I would like to see a little summon at the Game Awards.
This has got to be one of the longest gaps between base game and DLC that they've ever done in a FromSoft game before, right? Bordering on 2 years at this point.
If we get to February, it will be 2 years from release. I think, was it February?
Honestly, I couldn't tell you.
It was first half of the year for sure when Elden Ring came out. They did only announce the DLC a few months ago.
But we've been talking about it for months, we've known it's coming.
It will be about 2 years from release, depending on how long it takes. It's a ways out, Will.
Do you want to speculate on what's been keeping them? Or are you happy to put it down to the fact that they are going to put out something of a similar quality to Old Hunters and they're taking the goddamn time they need?
Whether I truly believe this is the case, this is what I hope and I trust FromSoft. I think they've probably made a brand new world, as opposed to in the Old Hunters where they had the old world, but they just zhuzhed it up a bit.
Right.
They had a few new bits and stuff.
Yeah,
but
I know what you mean.
I wouldn't mind betting they're making a brand new world, doing completely redesigned new bosses. And of course, Bloodborne again did that, but they did have one boss that was exactly the same character model as Cleric Beast. Let's be real about that.
Yeah.
And I just think because they're doing that, and the fact it won Game of the Year and is, I think, fair to say it's comfortably their most popular game of all time.
Yeah.
I think they just want to absolutely hit it out of the park, make sure it's amazing. And I trust them to do it because they've not let me down.
That's a very good point, actually, to mention there, that given the popularity of Elden Ring, this one has the most eyes on it. So if there was ever one for them to really need to nail and keep the good faith rolling, then this would be a good one to do it on.
Yeah, and the other thing, of course, is, again, going back to the Old Hunters. In the Old Hunters, they added a bunch of new weapons and things as well. So they could take that into consideration. They're probably able to come up with new weapons, new weapon arts, maybe some new side quests.
New spells, all sorts
we
of
don't know how big it's going to be as well. Bloodborne's a very small game compared to Elden Ring. I think it's just going to take that long, especially if they're doing really handcrafted, curated levels. And I'm here for it. But with that ray of hope hopefully coming very soon, we come to the end of the news for this week. So now I think it's about time we moved on to the...
A Games Challenge!
So, as mentioned at the top of the show, my challenge this week, and I have to win. Otherwise, the games challenge for this year is over and Will is the champion. My challenge this week was to play some Bloodborne and to beat Father Gascoigne and Cleric Beast at Blood Level 4 using only my fists. No items, no weapons, which meant no parrying, no help, no summons, none of that nonsense. Just me, my fists. And the only caveat to those rules were that they only apply to the two bosses in question. I was allowed to use my weapons and stuff to grind for souls, to purchase blood vials, because unlike the Dark Souls challenge, there's no regenerating Estus.
Exactly, yeah.
With that in mind, I would like to open by saying Bloodborne is one of my favourite games of all time, so this is a very nice challenge, I thought. And a couple of housekeeping things before we start. I had to start as the Waste of Skin class because that is the only class that is blood level 4.
Correct.
And one of the key mechanics in this game, parrying and then visceral damage, basically can't be used, but it's worth noting that visceral damage does, I believe, scale off your skill stat. And the Waste of Skin starting class has a starting skill stat of 9, which is terrible.
Sub 10 for any of your skills is a horrible start.
Yeah, and I believe that my only 10s were like strength and maybe health. Yeah, it's brutal starting class. And I had a very strong start because my PlayStation controller charger cable was broken, so I couldn't charge my controllers.
Okay.
But luckily, I had another micro USB, so we avoided a crisis and I was able to crack on. So, few stats for some context in this. It's worth noting that quite quickly before I started actually doing the challenge, I ran to the bosses to hit them and see how much damage I was doing.
Yeah. Just a punch and run.
You also, when you find a boss in this game, you unlock, is it Insight it's called?
You do, yeah.
And that unlocks one of the shops for me as well.
Yeah.
So this is obviously quite similar to the Dark Souls challenge that I set for Will right at the start of the game's challenge this year, but with some key differences that I think is fair to point out here. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you said that Asylum Demon was, you were doing 2 damage a hit?
Yes, 2 damage a hit, yeah.
Yeah. So 825 health, 2 damage a hit, 413 hits.
Yeah. Took me about
right?
15, 20 minutes to get the Asylum Demon down.
And Taurus Beast, again, I think you said you were doing 2 damage per hit.
Yeah.
1,215 health, so 608 hits.
Yes.
Yeah.
That one took me more like half an hour, bit more than half an hour to take down.
Yeah. Father Gascoigne has 2,031 health,
yeah.
and I was doing 2 damage a hit. That's 1,016 hits.
Right.
Which is just slightly less than both of your bosses combined.
Yeah. Key difference, though, there is a way to do a good chunk of damage to him that wasn't available in the Dark Souls bosses.
We'll have to come to that, because whatever it was, I didn't f***ing find it.
Right, okay.
And Cleric Beast has 3,015 health, and fair play, I can do 3 damage a hit to this, so it's only 1,005 hits. Yeah. So nearly double the amount of hits. On, I think you'd agree with me, unquestionably harder bosses.
Harder in terms of health amount, not harder in terms of moveset, I would say.
I completely disagree with that. You're telling me you'd rather fight Father Gascoigne than f***ing Taurus Beast?
No, Gascoigne different, but the Cleric Beast is a very doable boss fight. Gascoigne, depending on how you play that, it's not a bad boss fight to do, fist only.
Fair. Well, we'll come to that.
I really thought that Cleric Beast was going to be the harder of the two when I set you the challenge.
No, well, that's not how it went
Interesting.
down.
Okay.
The reason I bring that up is because basically to say I had my work cut out.
You did.
It's a lot of hits, a lot of concentration needed.
Hey man, I've given you a couple challenges earlier this year. You were saying they were too easy, so I'm finally glad that I've set you one that you're making out to be a challenge.
Oh, dude, this is intense. Dude.
Good.
So, couple of other disclaimers before we get started into the actual meat and bones in this, because it actually played a very crucial part in the challenge to come. I don't know what this is, but my PlayStation would randomly just turn itself off and go into rest mode for no reason.
That sounds like it may be overheating issues.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was, but then I'd be able to play for 7 hours. And then it did it, so it was very weird. And this happened enough times. I will say it did stop happening, but it happened enough times that I was always on edge that it was going to happen.
At any moment. You could be on like 1 HP left on the boss fight and you get a cutout.
Exactly. I will say thankfully that didn't happen, but this was frustrating. Very frustrating. And for the reasons I've just outlined as well, this it just took a long time, and attempts took a long time. So with all that said, we get into what I'd call the setup phase. I decided, right, okay, I'm going to need to grind because I need to collect some blood vials. I had none at this point. What I did was, when you wake up, there is a wolf in like the very first room that has half a health bar. I left him alive very deliberately because initially from the very start I was probably going to do this, but especially when I saw how little damage I was doing and how much health they had, I was like, right, I definitely need to do this. So I performed wolf skip.
Okay, right. Whereby
you can use the wolf to glitch yourself through a gate.
Yeah, he grabs you and kind of pushes you through as part of his animation, yeah.
Exactly, that unlocks the Forbidden Woods, which is a mid-game area.
Yeah.
And the reason I did this was because it meant that I could run through my usual route of Central Yharnam collecting blood shards, but then I could also sprint my ass avoiding every single enemy to click up twin blood shards and get a +6 weapon to make grinding just really snappy. Also meant that I could grind in Forbidden Woods, which meant I was getting infinitely more souls at a time, which meant I could just buy a load of potions, which were all needed. All of them. I bought over 1,500.
Nice.
Like easily. Jesus. Like not a problem. because they were only 180 souls each because I hadn't defeated any bosses yet. And I thought, right, stockpile now.
Yeah, they get more expensive the more bosses you beat. I think Gascoigne's a pretty big trigger for a price hike as well.
Yeah, it is, as it turns out. But thankfully I did this, and not that it matters at all in the run other than for this instance. I picked the Hunter's Axe because I thought that'll do the most damage in a single hit while I'm grinding. So I did wolf skip, was able to do this. It meant I could grind very quickly in between attempts, which we now get to now. For those that haven't played the game before, just to give an idea of what the bosses are, Father Gascoigne, he's a hunter like we are, the player character, who by the way is called Larry the Fist.
Oh, that was your character name? Nice.
That was my character's name, yeah. Big jacked ginger chap with the old curtain hairstyle. Father Gascoigne has a very similar moveset to the Hunter's Axe, actually, funnily enough, because that's what he uses.
He's a blood-frenzied hunter, though, isn't he? So he's been corrupted by his bloodlust, and he's gone a bit psycho.
Oh, yeah. He's sort of semi-wolf, semi-beast when you first meet him.
Beasts all over the shop. You'll be one of them, sooner or later.
The only difference between the Hunter Axe moveset that I have and Gascoigne's has is he can shoot at any point, basically, and his
interrupt his
blunderbuss
combos,
exactly, just like spread shots. And he has 3 phases. Phase 1 is he's using just the Hunter's Axe in its first form. Phase 2, he uses the switched up form, which makes it a 2-handed axe, which the player character can't shoot the gun with, but Gascoigne can because he's a badass. And then he has Phase 3, where he fully becomes a big old beast wolfy thing and hits a bunch harder and jumps at you and swipes a lot, and it's just quite painful to do when you have no weapon. Very easy if you can parry, I must say. And Cleric Beast is kind of a big grey wolfy skeleton-y kind of deer antlery monstrosity.
Yeah.
Like big old boss, very cool looking, really, really sort of signature screech that you hear a couple of times as you're making your way to the arena as well.
Kind of built a little bit like a more gangly golem, but it's darker in colour and obviously giant, like absolutely giant. You probably come up to its knee when it's hunched over, right?
Oh, yeah. This thing is like the size of a building. It's huge.
It is able to stand on its rear legs, but it mostly operates on an all-fours basis, kind of smashing around the arena.
Yeah, and interestingly, this was the one you could probably give the most parallels to Taurus Demon with, because they are kind of large bosses on a bridge, and although the Bloodborne bridge is wider, there's more things like wagons and like lamp posts and things that sort of get in your way.
In a normal scenario, that boss fight is probably one of the easiest in the game until you get unfortunately caught behind a wagon or a coffin or something like that.
Get stuck on scenery, yeah. This boss only has one phase, but throughout this one phase, it can sort of buff itself up. It screams at itself and gets like a little aura. And during that phase it doesn't really have that many different attacks per se. They just hit a lot harder and the combos last a bit longer.
Yeah.
The only other attack you really need to watch out for with Cleric Beast is he has a grab, and it doesn't kill you, but it basically kills you. It may as well kill you when you have no health at blood level 4. So, to give you some context, Will gave some times at the start there. What I would call a good run at these bosses, a good run where you sort of get, half health maybe. It was half an hour minimum, but, going into 40, 45, maybe even longer, depending on how badly I was doing.
I've seen runs of Cleric Beast on the internet take anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes under the same parameters. Yeah.
It's 3 to 4 hits from 100% HP for death in most cases. But in Cleric Beast buffed phases and mainly Gascoigne phase 3, but some attacks in phase 2 when he's double-handed, it can become 2 or 3, maybe even 1 to 2 hits. It can get really brutal.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was very hard to deal with, particularly on Cleric Beast for the most part, but also a little bit on Gascoigne, was if you use camera lock on, it can go a bit funky on some of the attacks and the combos, and it can become almost harder than the boss itself.
I'm going to go ahead and say now that both of these bosses, using the techniques that I'm thinking of, camera lock on is probably the worst thing you could ever do.
You're absolutely correct. I was using manual camera a lot.
Yes, 100%.
There were occasions where I locked on, when the opportunity was there for me to do so, but for the most part I was manual, which isn't too bad, but it's a different way of playing for me.
You got to relearn it.
So I made the decision early on that I was going to defeat Father Gascoigne first, because for me, as I said last week, I thought that would be the hardest one. 3 phases, quite an unpredictable moveset at times. Some of the same sort of starts to the attack can lead to different combos. For example, he can roll into you and either shoot his gun, swipe at you, roll again sometimes. Very rare, but it happens. So I just thought this was going to be the most finicky fight, and also his arena's a pain in the ass.
Yes.
You have the bottom, what you generously call the wide area, but it's not because there's gravestones everywhere.
Just like a large cemetery area, isn't it? Completely littered with clusters of tombstones and trees and things.
All of which you can get stuck on, which you don't want to do against Gascoigne. So for all of my runs throughout all time, including the first time I ever beat Gascoigne at my friend Daniele's house, shout out, I've always fought him. You run up some stairs and there's like a really thin but clear area.
Yes,
I always fight him there.
That's the technique, yeah.
But I was just getting absolutely destroyed by this man because you're hitting him, it's doing nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
You lose any stagger that you might have had with a weapon. You can't parry, which is the easiest way to defeat Gascoigne. So it wasn't so much a case of it being hard learning his moves, because I kind of already knew a lot of them, but it was knowing when to attack. This basically became a game of dodge.
Yes.
And what I was finding is you can dodge a bunch, just kind of get behind him, run in and get 2, maybe 3 hits. But 2 is really, really what you're looking at here. And then you have to dance around a lot. And RNG can come into this a lot because you can get some nice runs where he'll do the exploitable attacks really easy. Like he'll roll and do his shot.
Yeah.
If you time it well, you can dodge forward, he does his shot and you can get behind him and get 3 hits. It's no problem.
That's right, yes.
But you can also have runs where he's just being a pain in the ass.
He's just doing the same annoying, undodgeable or difficult to find a window after it move over and over again.
Or just constantly shooting at you, just every time shot.
That is really taking me back to the Taurus Beast on the bridge. There's a couple moves that he does. They give you a big window at the end, and other ones where there's just nothing.
It was very soul-destroying, honestly. As I mentioned, because a good run is half an hour minimum, and I know you know this from when you did your challenge, you have to concentrate.
It's a long, sustained concentration. Yeah.
Yeah, and it really is because, you know, anywhere from 2 to 4 hits for death for me, and to heal, I have to run away and deal with an animation. And he's quick, like he'll get to you quickly.
Oh, yeah. Especially in third stage when he starts his jumping, diving bullshit.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, nonsense.
Clear half the arena.
The most useful thing I found for that was you can drop down onto like a mini roof ledge and then drop down into the graveyard.
Right, okay.
You know where you find the red brooch?
Yeah.
You can drop down there. I found that was a good way to get just enough time to heal, even in phase 3, although getting there when he's beast mode is a different story. And there isn't really too much of an epic story here, because this was just perseverance. There's no magic. I mean, I'm very interested to hear what this technique you're talking about is, because for me, there was no magic technique. There was no, like, exploit. I will say I didn't use the internet at all in this, so maybe that's on me. I probably could have found a way to do it. But, I thought that was against the spirit of how I wanted to do this challenge. So this was just persistence. I can't even tell you how long I was fighting this guy. I don't know if it's because I was being too defensive and dodging. Maybe there's a way to get him to stagger, because we'll talk about something with Cleric Beast that I discovered. But this was just painful, dude. It got to the point where I literally had to drain all emotion out of my body before I could even play it. Yeah. Because otherwise you get to like half health bar and like that does nothing.
Kicks in, yeah.
Yeah, but when you're sort of however many hours I was into this, honestly, you just get to the point where it's like half a health bar, okay, woo.
Yeah.
That's like the baseline. That's where it needs to be. But for me to even start calling it even an attempt, it's when you get to like a quarter left and he's in phase 3. That's when you know, okay, this is an attempt.
So it's like, that's when in your mind the boss health bar appears.
Yeah, exactly. By the end of it, because the early attempts, it was exhilarating. It really was, as I'm sure you're going to know again from the Dark Souls challenge. Like it was really exhilarating, like doing it, getting your hits, not getting hit for ages. Then you make the mistake of looking at his health bar and you say, "Oh, awesome! It looks like I've done nothing." Great.
Yeah.
I started judging it on the phases by the end of it. But I mean, I can't really say much more than that. It was a real fucking slog. I'm happy to say I was eventually able to beat Gascoigne.
Well done. Bravo.
But me. Honestly, there was no hype when I beat him.
Really? No, damn.
That's how, literally nothing. That's how drained I was, because there was that. And then I knew, and now I've got to do what I thought was going to be the harder boss.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So yes, please. So please tell me what this magical technique is that you know of.
So a lot of the runs that I've seen done for Gascoigne involve essentially stun locking him using heavy attacks from behind. After he does 2 moves in his moveset, there's enough of a window that, provided that you're not actually locked onto him, if you stay close enough behind him, you just charge up an attack from behind. And, as you know, when you hit an enemy with a charged attack from behind, they go into their stagger. And then you just run around and do your visceral. Is it called a visceral attack? I can't remember what they're called.
It is called a visceral, and that's so funny. That never crossed my mind.
You can basically stun lock Gascoigne and have him under in like 10 minutes. Under 10 minutes.
Of course you can do that. Why the didn't I think of that?
Yeah, man.
I was doing that to mobs to kill them. Why didn't I think to do that?
Yeah.
Oh, mate. I am crushed. That is fucking brutal, dude.
That's why I told you why the Cleric Beast would have been easier. I reckon if you'd have done that, all it is then is figuring out which moves that give you the window.
That's a fucking 5-minute fight.
It's a 5-minute fight. It'd probably taken you a couple hours tops to actually master. And that's including the RNG you'd have been up against. As you mentioned earlier, you correctly identified, he does need to do the moves that give you the appropriate window to do that attack.
I feel so dumb.
When you were talking about it last week, I almost told you about the backstab thing. I was like going to like lay it out for you. And it's like, I'll let him figure it out, sort of thing. And
No.
right. Okay.
Man. Yeah, Bloodborne's one of my favourite games. Yeah, I don't even fucking think of the backstab mechanic. Jesus Christ.
I will be 100% fair to you.
Oh.
100% fair to you. In all of the other FromSoft games that you've played within recent memory, it is the only game that has that mechanic. And I think that you were probably relying on almost sort of... The games kind of merged together in a weird muscle memory sense in some ways, and you probably just...
You're very kind to try and give me an out of this. You really are. The only thing I can say is I did have Lies of P muscle memory still, which is really interesting.
Right. Okay.
Just in terms of how they reminded me of each other.
Yeah.
But that's no fucking excuse, dude. Like, I can't believe I didn't think of that. I guess I assumed you wouldn't be able to do it because you haven't got a weapon. Because you can do that to Orphan of Cos. You can't stun lock him, but you can. That's how an easy way to beat him. You dodge under him and then do that.
And I'm, of course, exaggerating when I say I've seen people stun lock him, but do you know what I mean? It's essentially the same
I
thing.
know exactly what you mean,
Yeah, they are rinsing him.
Oh, man, I feel stupid. I really do.
Anyway, moving on to Cleric Beast.
That is so many hours of my life I'm not going to get back for something that could be so simple.
Moving on, eh?
So anyway, after all that, which has just been completely destroyed by... I wish I hadn't asked. I'm genuinely like so annoyed at myself. I really wish I hadn't asked. But anyway, I did all that. I nipped back to the Hunter's Dream real quick so I could buy his clothes.
Yeah.
Because I was like, F you, Gascoigne. I'm just going to wear your outfit now. And we got on to Cleric Beast. There's a really interesting thing about Cleric Beast that I think only happens when you have no weapon. His hitboxes go a bit funky.
Oh, really?
Because I think the game expects you to be able to have that extra reach of the weapon.
Right.
It's very rare. It doesn't happen like all the time, but it's worth mentioning. And he does certain attacks where he, like, as you mentioned, he bends over and kind of slaps down. And it looks like you're going to punch him in the arm. It really does. And you just don't.
Oh, right. Okay.
I don't know if it's just a weird way the box is and because you have no weapon. It's very bizarre, but this fight I thought was going to be so much worse because he's a big boss in a similarly tight arena when you scale it all together with, as we mentioned, all these obstacles you can get stuck on. And it was hard. Don't get me wrong. This was also brutal.
Yeah.
But it wasn't as brutal as Gascoigne. One thing that I found that I could do, but it really wasn't useful in the end because I couldn't get it consistently, is if you do focus on the same limb a bunch, you can actually get Cleric Beast into a state where you can visceral him.
Yes.
From what I believe is the limb break mechanics, you can do it to Dark Beast Pile as well.
That's right. I think repeatedly attacking his left forearm is a way to trigger that weak point.
It really only happened a couple of times and it didn't factor into many of the runs at all. It was just something I noticed, which I thought was interesting. Would have been more interesting if I didn't now know that I could have f***ing visceraled Gascoigne a bunch.
Yes, yeah.
So I've written that in my notes. It's like, oh yeah, well I found a way to visceral this one, but Gascoigne, you just can't visceral him. Dickhead. But as I mentioned, this didn't really happen much because the RNG didn't really allow it, because I was still doing the same sort of tactic of playing the dancing simulator and then just going in and doing a few hits.
This one is very similar to my two boss fights in Dark Souls. Take a couple hits, don't get greedy, back away, let him do his move, rinse and repeat. Yeah,
this one I think you could compare quite favourably to Taurus Beast. You had the added difficulty of mobs.
Yes.
But I think it's fair to say Cleric Beast is a bit more frantic.
Yeah, he's got flurries of attacks rather than kind of one or two slow hits.
And if you get caught in a particularly unlucky combo, you just die straight away, especially when he's buffed up. Again, unfortunately, there isn't really any sort of legendary story of how I found this amazing technique. It was once again perseverance. A lot less perseverance. This took comfortable. I will say at this point, I thankfully I was able to beat it. Otherwise, I'd be crushed at what Will just told me. I really would have been.
Oh, God. Yeah.
But no, honestly, if I'd failed at Gascoigne and then you just go, oh, dude, you could have backstabbed, I'd been like, I hate myself. But thankfully I was able to do it.
Congratulations, man. The game's challenge lives on for another week.
It does live on for another week, but I have to be honest, there was very little hype on this one too. I was so emotionally drained.
Mate, you give yourself... There has been quite a few challenges in this year that you've made so much harder for yourself in a weird, artificial way.
Yeah.
Vampire Survivors was like this, and I would argue that your Minecraft run was like this as well, by kind of forcing a reset every time you didn't find within the square.
Yeah.
You've ramped up the difficulty in these challenges.
Yeah. Well, and all three of them, those particular ones, I was able to finish. I'm being, obviously there was a bit of hype when I beat Cleric Beast, and I was able to do it, like, with time to spare. Like, I did this, I finished on like Wednesday night.
Oh, right, okay, nice one, yeah, awesome.
There's no sugarcoating this. It took me just under 26 hours to do all of this.
Wow, okay.
25 hours and 55 minutes.
That's rivaling my Monster Hunter Rise challenge, I gotta say.
That doesn't take into account all the times my PlayStation reset itself. So maybe add in a little bit more for that. It's not going to make it much more, but probably another hour or two, genuinely. And I mean, I've got to say, of those 26 hours, total enjoyment was probably 2 to 3 hours when setting up, and then a further 2 to 3 hours on the attempt.
Yeah.
But otherwise, this was just soul destroying. The overriding emotion was relief when I finished this. I was like, thank God I don't have to do this again. I'm never doing a whole run of that. That. Even if you were allowed to level up, this would be brutal. And we did joke the other week when you sent me the Skyrim challenge that, I'm going to say something that's going to make you hate Skyrim. Oh, mate, you'd have to take a lot for me to hate Skyrim. I questioned my love for Bloodborne during this challenge. I still fucking love it. Don't get me wrong. Like that's never going to change. But
you just don't like punching your way through Bloodborne.
Well, it's not so much I don't like it, but one of the most satisfying mechanics in the game is the parry mechanic.
Absolutely,
it's so good. It's unrivaled. And when you don't have it, it's a very different game, and it's not as fun. What is nice is I do think that I'm probably going to do a Bloodborne run soon as a result.
All right, okay. That's
I got the little itch. And the other thing I meant to say as well is just for context, 26 hours I spent on this. I've got a file on there where I've done the entire game, all side quests, collected every item, all bosses, all DLC, all that good stuff. And I'm also about halfway through New Game Plus. That's 35 hours.
Right, okay.
So just to give you a concept of how long I spent doing this, but there's two takeaways from this. One, I'm a fucking idiot, and that's fine. But the other takeaway is...
You are one persevering bastard.
Well, that too. Okay, there's three takeaways.
You are a stupid, perseverant...
Stupid son of a but but I'm stubborn. And I get things done.
Brute forcing your way through, just banging your head against something.
I'm genuinely so upset with myself. But it's fine, because it is 5-all.
It is.
I have drawn it level somehow.
One more week to go, though. It's still up for grabs.
It's not up for grabs. It is now winner takes all, essentially.
Mine for the taking.
If you are able to complete the challenge that I set you this week, you will be the new champion.
It all hinges on this.
But if you are unable to, then we go to sudden death, and we're potentially looking at comeback of the century. So pressure may be on. Your challenge this week is actually something that I told you about months ago. I know that you've subsequently forgotten, or you say you have.
I did, yeah. I neglected to store it in the memory bank, so this has totally left me.
But your challenge, similar to the end of last year when I set your final challenge to actually f***ing complete Elden Ring, your final challenge this year is going to be to complete another game that you have yet to finish that you've had for ages. However, to make this fun, we're revisiting the roulette, baby.
The roulette? Oh, God, okay.
Will, I have some options for you. I want you to pick a number between 1 and 4, please.
Oh, God. Okay. Let's go for number 3. Why not?
Number 3. You sure?
3.
Locking
number
it
3.
in?
I've got no idea what any of them could be, so this is really a shot in the dark. So number 3.
Number 3.
Final answer.
Final answer. In which case, Will, your final challenge is... to complete Sekiro with the non-Shura ending, the full ending, baby.
Oh, damn. Okay, that's a big challenge.
Yeah, you don't have to start again.
Oh, okay, that's
because
better.
This is completing games that you've started and had for ages and haven't finished.
True. That is true.
But you do have to do the full-on get to the end, beat the final boss, not the Shura. Although I think, based on where your file is up to, you've already passed the point where you could do Shura anyway.
Yes, I have. Yeah, I've surpassed that.
So there you go. Simple as that. It's the only completion one I've given you, I believe.
It is, yeah. Well,
Unless
I mean, yeah, unless you're counting the Monster Hunter inadvertent, had to kind of complete the game again.
Well, yeah. That wasn't part of the challenge,
It ended up being part of the challenge, but it wasn't. Yes, no, so this is the first true completion challenge. Although this isn't necessarily a true completion challenge either, because I'm not starting from the beginning.
No,
so.
it's not.
Okay, yeah. I had a little panic there.
No,
I was thinking, you're expecting me to do this from 0 to 100? Non-sure ending? But yeah, no. From the place that I am now, which is roughly, I think, a third of the way through the game-ish.
Yeah, you just beat the giant ape.
Yeah, we were hanging around there. I need to kind of brush up on it. I actually need to have a look and figure out which save file that was on, whether that's on my PlayStation 4 or my PC, and I'm praying that it's on my PC, I'll be honest. Coincidentally, I didn't actually bring this up on the pod, but I did actually stick maybe about 6 or 7 hours into Sekiro last week as well, coincidentally. Starting from the beginning of the game, just to kind of play around with it. I really like Sekiro. So, yeah, good timing, I guess, to get back into it.
So there you go. Simple as that. You complete Sekiro, you win the games challenge.
Oh, it's a good one. It's a good one, man. I like this. I like it a lot.
Either way, I'm going to say it now. I'm pleased with myself to have gotten back in the position where it's actually coming down to the final week. I thought when I went 2 down relatively early doors that wouldn't happen. So I'm pleased with that. Let's see how Will gets on this week, and then we'll take it from there. So with that, we come to the end of the show. If you've enjoyed what we listened to, you can, as always, find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and pretty much anywhere else you get your podcasts by searching for Total Pod Mode.
We also post regular video content of our playthroughs, stream highlights, as well as the podcast on our YouTube channel, Total Pod Mode.
You can also find us on X by searching for @TotalPodMode, all one word.
Or you can find me at WhoDaFunk on X, and I'm also on Twitch under twitch.tv/WhoDaFunk.
And you can find me on X @MrBames, and I'm also on Twitch under twitch.tv/MrBames_TPM. And please do check us out on all those social media platforms. Please do leave us a like, a 5-star rating. Get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. Give us some ideas, some suggestions of what you'd like us to talk about. Any engagement is good engagement.
Exactly, and we really appreciate all the support we've received so far.
But with that, it is the end of the show. Until next time, take care everyone. Goodbye.
Bye now.